Aloha mai kako. My name is David Lassner, and I serve as the president of the University of Hawaiʻi, leading our 10-campus system and our flagship University of Hawaiʻi at Manoa. We serve these islands, which are the ancestral home of the Kanaka Maoli, or Native Hawaiian people. My own ancestry involves centuries of wandering, but I am now privileged to make my home in lush Waiomau within Palolo Valley, in the Ahupua'a of Waikiki, within the Moku of Kona on the island of Oahu. I am personally grateful to this place and her people, both of which have embraced me for over 4 decades. Over 125 years ago, Queen Liliuokalani yielded the Hawaiian Kingdom and these territories under duress and protest to the United States to avoid the bloodshed of her people. And it was nearly 30 years ago that the U.S. government formally apologized for this act, which it has acknowledged as an illegal overthrow. As the only public institution of higher education in Hawaii, the University of Hawaii is strategically clear in our commitment to become a model Indigenous serving institution, committed to the sustainability of Hawaii's people, islands, language, culture, and knowledge. This strategic imperative is named Hawaii Papaokeao, or the Hawaii Foundation of Enlightened Knowledge. So today I welcome you all, and I offer up an invitation to join us in celebrating the University of Hawaii's ongoing contributions to the advancement of Indigenous Hawaiian knowledge. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. I am Mainette Kapiahiokalani Padikinani Benham, Chancellor of the University of Hawaii West Oahu and co-chair of Hawaii Papaokeao, with Chancellor of Maui College, Dr. Louis Hokoana. Hawaii Papaokeao was established in January 2012 and consists of representatives from all 10 campuses. The purpose of this presidentially appointed committee is to set goals and objectives to address the higher education needs of Native Hawaiians through 3 pathways: leadership development, community engagement, and Hawaiian language and cultural parity. At our first meeting this school year, our discussions focused on how our Native Hawaiian students, faculty, and staff and their families were managing this challenging time. Committee members shared that folks on their campus were feeling isolated, disconnected, and depressed due to the psychosocial, emotional, and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we asked, what could Hawaii Papaokeao do? And after some discussion led by Tapori Tangaro, representative from Hawaii Community College, we decided that we wanted to address Indigenous well-being through the nourishment that can be found in the abundant talent and knowledge across our campus communities. Hence, the birth of the inaugural Hawaii Papaokeao series, He Ukana Aloha Kā Kīlauea. Mahalo for joining us today, and we hope to see you and your family and friends every month through June of 2021 as we lovingly share this makana with you. E nā nea kākou I ka ike kupuna I ho'owili ai mai ki kilo mai. Enjoy and be enriched by the wisdom passed down from our kupuna through so many generations to us today. Aloha.
No tihi lawe te aloha la hanali o ka ke le ta moana la hana holo ma mua holo ma ho pela hana ta upono tai hui tamata ni la hana hae o mai ki la hue ala no Kamehameha ʻelima.
Mai ka makani o launi ui ke ahe o ka olu e kipa mai ka mehana i ka poli o ka ina Niuhelewai Paia e koleo Aloha e aloha e aloha e
Niuhelewai, a wahipana, a storied place. At the na'au of Kapa Lama Ahupua'a, where Haumea made her home, where Ka'ulu laid the nets of Makali'i, where Lepeamoa colorfully fought, where chiefs took residence, where fresh springs fed lo'i and nurtured fish ponds, and where trees sway in the Olau New wind. Niuhelewai, a fertile aina rich in mo'olelo, Eola Niuhelewai.
Aloha mai, Belina mai, meke aloha kākou apau. Greetings to everyone and mahalo for joining us today for Honolulu Community College's He Ukana Aloha Kā Kīlauea presentation, which is entitled Kawā Kahiko o Niuhelewai, Mo'olelo and Traditions of Niuhelewai. O wao o kumualapaki Luke, o ka po'o Kulana Hawaii Hawaiian Programs Division. I will be your co-host today, along with Kumukalani Ka'awa Flores, who is the Hawaiian Studies instructor as well as the Culture and Place-Based Director for our Honolulu Community College campus.
Hi, aloha nui a kākou pakahi a pau, mahalo e alapaki. We are so excited to be here today and to present and share a few of our ka'au and mo'olelo legends and stories. But before we do, we would like to first honor our mo'ikane, Loto Kapuaiwa, King Kamehameha V, with a mele hula entitled Kamehameha ʻelima. This mele honors Kamehameha V and speaks about the steamship Kilauea, which our He Ukana Aloha Kā Kīlauea series is named for. No laila eia e ke mele o Kamehameha ʻelima. Kaukau. Ai, I aloha ia Kilauea. Pa. I aloha. I aloha ia Kilauea la. I o ka pelea o ka moana. Holo mamua, holo mahope. Ka upono ka ihu I ka makahani. I aloha. I aloha ia Kilauea la. I o ka pelea o ka moana. Holo mamua, holo mahope. Ka upono ka ihu I ka makahani. Hakilua ka uahi ke kaila. O mea e ka huila malalola. Hala e ka lai o ka laula. O ni ana molokai mamuala. Hakilua ka uahi ke kaila. No mea e ka huila malalola. Hala e ka lai o ka laula. O ni ana molokai mamuala. Uli aku e ke alo ia la hainala he ukana kā e inoa. Kohuana manu ke anela, a holo holo I ke ali alia, ana ia mai na kapuanala, no kamehameha e lima, e inoa e ala e ala e ai, he inoa no kamehameha e lima. We would like to send a special mahalo to 3 of our haumana who volunteered, or as we sometimes like to say, voluntold, to be our featured olapa. And they are Kale Hasigawa, Kiha Rodriguez, and Kaulada Stanley. We'd like to also send a special mahalo to our wonderful multimedia specialist superstar, Rochelle or Rocky Bijo, and her team for taking care of all of our media needs for today's presentation.
And I'd like to make a few announcements. First of all, well, one announcement, we have questions and answers at the end of our presenters presenting. So you'll be able to put questions or submit questions towards the end of the webinar. And we are gonna go over some ka'au and mo'olelo that we'll be sharing with you today that takes place within Aupua Kapalama and the Ili Aina of Niuhelewai, which Honolulu Community College is located within. And to provide us with more Ike Aina and knowledge and mo'olelo of this place, we'd like to feature Kumu Tiani Akeo Vasquez, who is a Kumu Ike Hawaii, as well as Olelo Hawaii, Hawaiian Studies and Hawaiian Language instructor here at Honolulu Community College.
Aloha mai kākou o keia o Tiani, kekahi mea ha'i mo'olelo ma Niuhelewai ni. Aloha everyone, Tiani here, and it is my privilege to share some mo'olelo here at Niuhelewai about the areas surrounding our campus here in Kapalama. Honolulu Community College is located on the island of Oahu, and prior to Kamehameha uniting the islands, there were 4 separate kingdoms, Oahu definitely being its own. And our island is further divided into moku districts, and the district that we're located in is called Kona. And Kona means leeward in Hawaiian, but on the island of Oahu, the district of Kona runs from Moanalua to Kuli'o'o, which is kind of seen as Honolulu town today. We have 2 mountain ranges here. Ko'olau is the name of our mountain range. So you'll see Ko'olau on each island because Ko'olau just means windward in Hawaiian. But only on this island do we have a mountain range named Ko'olau. And on the opposite end of the island, on the west side, we have the Waianae Mountains. Another term that some might be familiar with is ahupua. Ahupua is a popular term today for land divisions. But another term that should be more pertinent and should be applied specifically for Oahu land divisions is ka'anani'au. And so we are in the land division of Kapalama. Kapalama is situated between 2 valleys, between Kalihi and Nu'uanu. Behind us, there is a ridge in the back that runs between Kalihi and Nu'uanu, and it is called Keana Kamano or Keana Mano Ridge. Kapalama begins further Makai along that same ridge line. The name of our wind here in this area is called Olau Niu, and it refers to the stabbing movement of the leaves of the coconut trees as the wind blows. It also has some other kolohe metaphors. But we receive rains from nearby. From Kalihi, we receive the ua po'olipilipi and the haupe'epe'e. From Nu'uanu, we receive the makalau koa and the pua hiohio and the malailua. And from Honolulu, we receive the ua kukalahale. The naming of Kapalama has a few different stories. The grandmother of Lepeamoa is named Kapalama. Lepeamoa is a famous female chicken kupua who was raised here, and so I'll tell you more about her in a little bit. Without the ka in front of it, just Palama. Palama is a name that was often used to describe this area, especially by people who lived in this area. But Kapalama, or the Palama, specifically refers to a famous site that was located here in this area, of which the enclosure was made of lama wood. Lama wood is a type of Hawaiian ebony. And these kinds of lama enclosures made of lama were designated for the arranged matings amongst the highest ranking ali'i, as their goal was to produce higher ranking children, which are sometimes referred to as ni'aupio chiefs. Malo writes about this practice amongst the ali'i in order to preserve their rank and their status. And he says the highest chiefs were the result of arrangements made within the same family of close relation. If this mating at the Palama resulted in a pregnant chiefess, everyone celebrated the conception of this child that was likened to a god due to their high-ranking status. On the opposite end, we have Reverend William Ellis, who writes about his disgust of ni'aupio amongst the ali'i. He says, among the higher ranks, marriage seems to be conducted on principles of political expediency with a view to strengthen alliances and family influence. And among the reigning family, brothers and sisters marry. He goes on about an arranged mating between Oahu and Maui, chief and chiefess, and how the chiefly council has agreed to this and supports this match. And he's kind of surprised, but the reason they give him is pretty much that there's nobody else high enough ranking for them. He says that they ought not to form any alliances with inferiors, as it was desirable that the supreme rank they held should descend to their posterity. And so the resulting children often retained a higher rank and status than that of their parents. There are many storied places here in Uanu, starting at that back ridge, Keanamano or Keanakamano. It comes down into the Kalihi Valley side of Kapalama and creates Keanakamano Valley, which is today where the entrance is the front gate to Kamehameha schools. But this area was famous for the shark Aumakua, who used to swim up through the system of underground lava tubes that would swim up into this area to be fed and cared for by the family members that lived here, and then would swim back down to the ocean. And those caves were collapsed in the early 1900s. Many of you are familiar with Aleva or Aleva Heights, the site where Kamehameha Schools is located today, upper campus. But this area was also famous for a holua slide. While translating David Malo, Nathaniel Emerson includes a note describing it as being 18 feet wide so that two sleds could race at the same time. Malo, in his writings, he describes this practice. No ka he'e holua. He says, o ka he'e holua ke kahi hanale ale anui ia e na ali'i a me na kanaka. He hana pili vai vai no ka make make ka lehu. It was one of the things that was very much enjoyed, both the chiefs and the commoners, as the majority was interested in gambling or betting. Kenneth Emery later on goes looking for the slide in 1952 with some students, but finds that the slope where it's supposed to be has been recently plowed or bulldozed. Further down below Aleva, we have Kaivi'ula, the plains of Kaivi'ula below, which is the current site of Bishop Museum and where the freeway area is that runs across to Farrington. But remember that this was the early site of Kamehameha schools. It wasn't up until the 1930s that they started to build the upper campus and then move the girls' campus up there. And then it's not until much later that the boys' campus moves there as well. Coming down further, we also have Niuhelewai. Niuhelewai was the name of one of the two main streams here in this area. The other was Kapalama. And there was just such an abundance of vai or fresh water in this area. It was covered in lo'ikalo, taro patches, and lokoi'a or fish ponds. And you can see that on the early maps here. And all the waterways were eventually combined into Kapalama Canal as we see it today. When you repeat the word vai, Vai means wealthy or rich or treasured or value. And Hawaiians understood that if you had a lot of vai, that you were vai. And so it makes sense to have a water guardian in this area, which would be a mo'o, a water aumakua. And so the mo'o were oftentimes guardians for fish ponds and other bodies of waters. And here in this area specifically, we had Haumea. You may be very familiar with her daughter, Pele, who lives and is very active on Hawaii Island. But Haumea is the mother of Pele and all of her siblings who all do this awesome things. And she gives birth from all the different parts of her body. But there's an interesting story about Haumea living here, specifically in Niuhelewai, where she is defeated by a male named Ka'ulu. And Ka'ulu actually uses some fishing nets, some koko, as well as some special nets that he goes to get from Makali'i in order to defeat her. And it's interesting because Ka'ulu, the term Ka'ulu refers to growth, to an increase to increasing food supply, to posterity, and all of these things which are all connected to Haumea. And also the ulu, or the breadfruit tree, is also a kinolao, or another body form of hers that we see. And so because this land was highly valued, it made sense that the royal family settled here. Kamehameha, after he conquered Oahu, he actually farmed here in Niuhelewai and in Kapalama. And his descendants eventually lived here. His granddaughter, Ke'elikolani, accumulated most of his lands. And she lived here, and she left it to her cousin, Pauahi, who established Kamehameha schools. We have Ka'iulani School nearby, which is named for Princess Ka'iulani. Our Mo'i Wahine Lili'uokalani also had a home near in Kapalama called Mu'olaulani. And our Hawaiian patriot, Joseph Navahi, also lived nearby in this area. And so we see the evidence of this today. In Komo'olelo, Hawaii, David Malo describes kahakamua. O kahakamua kekahi mea makemake nui ia e na ali'i, that this was something that was very liked by the chiefs, as they enjoyed betting and gambling on the cockfights. And so, unlike most other places in the world, where someone might say, "What, you chicken?" Over here, the chicken never would represent fear, but instead represents someone who was fearless, someone who was an expert, or very adept at something, especially someone who was skilled at fighting. Although the chicken is not native to Polynesia, it is found throughout the Pacific, because our ancestors sailed across the Pacific over to South America and returned back with the chicken. And so when we look at one of our early cosmogonics, the Kumulipo, our ancestors knew this. And in the Kumulipo, the chicken is not born in the dark with all the other aumakua, all the other plants and animals. Instead, the chicken comes much later, during the time of light on the back of Wakea, during a time period and accompanied with all the many navigational stars that are needed when you're traveling across the Pacific. And so the chicken is often an aumakua to those who travel using the stars. This particular chicken in this story is born supernatural. Some of you might have heard of another kupua who was born as a chicken egg, which is Maui. Maui in the Kumulipo is born to Hina after she puts on the malo of Akalana. And so later on, when he goes to ask her, "Who's my father?" She says, "You're Maui Akamalo. You're Maui of the malo. It's the malo that is your parent." Again, Maui was born as a chicken egg. And look at all the awesome things that he accomplished. This story of Lepeamoa was published in the Hawaiian language newspaper Kanupepa Ku'oko'a in 1869 on September 18th. The title is He Ka'au no Kau'ilani, A Tale of Kau'ilani. And we'll just be looking at one part of a larger story that is named for Lepeamoa's brother, Kau'ilani, who is raised on Kauai. Samuela Kapohu presents this version of this story, And he doesn't claim authorship of this like many other Hawaiians who told mo'olelo, because this was a mo'olelo that had been handed down from generation to generation. And he really was just telling this version of it. And he didn't claim to know everything. And it was very common in the introduction or the preface to explain this, to say something like, hey, maybe this version isn't the same as what you, the reader, have heard in your family or where you come from. Or maybe this is a different version from what you heard. Maybe some things are left out and some other things are added in. But perhaps there is no one living today that knows all of it. This is also recognized in the Olelo no Eau, a ole pau ka ike I ka halau ho'okahi. Not all knowledge is learned in one school. Yeah, so our kupuna recognized that there were multiple schools of knowledge and different ways of doing things, especially when it came to different places, and not one was correct and the other one was wrong. And so like most Hawaiian mo'olelo, we start this mo'olelo with the genealogy. Eia na kupuna. Here are the grandparents. Here are the ancestors. And it starts with Mano Kalanik Po, chief of Kauai, and comes down to the parents, Kauhao and Keahua, who are descendants of the ali'i from Oahu and Kauai. And they are living on Kauai, Kauai Kini, which is located in Waialua. And Kauhao births a child, but when they look instead, he hua moa kekeki, the child is a chicken egg instead. And at one point, Keahua, her kane, even suggests tossing the egg out. E ki ola keia keiki. But one of the grandparents, Lua Kaikapu, she requests for the egg to care for it temporarily until the Oahu grandparents arrive. The story then turns to Oahu, where Kapalama and Honouliuli are living, and Kapalama knows that her daughter has birthed a chicken egg, this special child, and she tells her kane, we should go over there and go fetch our grandchild and take care of this grandchild for us. I ola keia mau iwi, so that the bones might live. And what she's talking about was this understanding of the significance of the relationship between grandparents and grandchildren in Hawaiian culture. Children oftentimes spent a lot of time with their grandparents while parents were busy. And there was much learning and teaching and so much things that was passed on through this time. And the expectation was also that this relationship was one of reciprocity, and that later on, when the grandparents were older, that the children would then in return take care of them. So because she knows she has a special grandchild, they prepare to travel to Kauai to fetch the egg. They board a canoe named Pohaku o Kauai out at Waianae at Kaena, and they head over to Kauai. They go up Mauka to Kauai Kini and tell the parents, hey, we came for the egg. That's just why we came all the way along this far away, all the way over here across this ocean. And they're told that it's in the hand of Lua Kaikapu, who's been caring for the egg since then. And the egg is brought to Kapalama, and she wraps it in this special kapa that she has, that's reserved for her newborn grandchild, a newborn chiefly child. And so they return to Oahu and settled in Kapalama. Kapalama turns to Honouliuli and says, hey, build a house for our grandchild. Go build a hale. And after the house is built, it says, he maikai a nani mauli, that it is well made and that it is beautiful. They didn't build a cage or a shed or a box and stick the chicken egg in it. They built a hale that was appropriate for their chiefly grandchild. And after the house was done, she said, hey, go make imu, go prep some food. And so as he's getting all the things ready and the food is finishing up being made, she turns over and uakiko, it had hatched. Yeah. And what did? He kino moa. There was a chicken sitting there in the place of the egg. And the chicken is described as having all the colors of the rainbow within its feathers. He lehulehu wale na wai ho'olu ano e ma kona kino holo o ko a apuni. He mea e kananilua ole. He mau hulu ano e he nui wale. Describing her beauty that is unmatched, and how all the light is like shining out from her feathers and even from like around her, like as if she has a glow. And the grandparents saw that she had multiple chicken bodies within their grandchild. O ke la ano kino, ke ia ano kino. Yeah, including the moa lava, the moa ulahiva, the moa pule pule, moa ele ele, moa nene, and all the moa, all the different kinds of chickens. One day while Lepea Moa is inside her hale and her grandparents outside, she changes. She changes into a kanaka, specifically, she changes into a human, specifically a kaikamahine, a young girl. It says, Loli ke kino, alilo I ko na kanaka. He kaikamahine uia nani ho'i, just a beautiful child, a beautiful young girl. Her skin is compared to all the rainbows that we see shining over the waters, as well as those that are shining in the heavens. And as a kaikamahine, remember, as a chicken, she had all the rainbow colored feathers. But now as a kaikamahine, the light is seen to radiate from within her, and there's just this glow about her. And so at one point she calls out, "E, auhea o lua, komo mai ho'i paha I loko." She calls out to the two of them, come inside. And they were pu'iwa, they were surprised when they heard a voice, because nobody lived there except them and their chicken grandchild. And after contemplating on it and in slightly confused and wonderment, Kapalama realizes it's their grandchild, and she says, "Hey, that's our grandchild, Uakua Kanaka, that has turned into a human, and she's calling us to come inside and see." And the story, or that issue, ends there with Aole I Pau. And so ends the first issue of He Ka'au no Kau'ilani. And every issue after that ended the same way. Aole I Pau, Aole I Pau. It is not finished. And even the last issue of that story in that newspaper would also end with Aole I Pau. Because remember that the story was not complete just by this one person that was telling the story. So the story will shift to more of a focus on Kau'ilani and being raised on Kauai and all of the different feats that he accomplishes. And eventually he comes over to Oahu, and he later on will use his sister to help Kakuhihewa, the ruling chief, defeat his brother-in-law Mauinui, who has a supernatural chicken named Ka'auhelemoa. And because Lepe Amoa is such a skilled fighter and has all the different kinds of chicken bodies, and also all the different colors of the rainbow within her that represents all the different skills she has in fighting. And so she's able to defeat Ka'auhelemoa, and also Kau'ilani. Kau'ilani conceals her early on so that everyone else cannot see her awesomeness. And because she's the underdog, no one bets on her, and therefore the win is very big. A'ole I Pau.
Oh, wow. Mahalo nui e kumutiani for that other more lelo of Niuhelewai and Kapalama. Many of us have heard about the famous battle of Kepaniwai at Iao Valley on the island of Maui. There are a few battles throughout the Pai'aina of Hawaii that ended in a similar situation. Kumutiani will now be joined by Kumu Ha'oli Lorenzo Ilarco, who is Kumu Olelo Hawaii at Honolulu Community College. And they will be sharing a similar mo'olelo that took place here at Niuhelewai that was presented by a Mana Leo, native speaker of Olelo Hawaii.
Aloha nui kako. Today I have the awesome pleasure of introducing two things. One is a mo'olelo, and the second is a hulukupuna who grew up right at Niuhelewai. So the story that we're going to talk about today is Ke Kauama Niuhelewai, or the battle at Niuhelewai, which is that stream that ran through our campus. So this story is actually, we hear it from multiple different sources, but I think one of the best sources that I've heard it from was from Kupuna Henry Hanale Machado. Kupuna Machado grew up in Niuhelewai, actually on Rebello Lane, which is right next to campus. And he tells this story that he must have heard growing up as a keiki here at Niuhelewai. So Kupuna Machado was a guest on Kaleo Hawaii, the Hawaiian language broadcast show hosted by Kumu Larry Kimura. He visited in 1973, and he talks about his upbringing here at Niuhelewai. And so one of the things that he does share is this mo'olelo, Ke Kauama Niuhelewai. So we're just going to listen to a couple of minutes of this. I pulled out some of the most important things here, but let's go ahead and listen.
Owai ai hea ke ia wahi kahua kaua. Ai no ma palamano.
Kaua ma Niuhelewai o e no o kahahana o ia ka ke li'i ma ha o ahonei. Ho'ona mai o kahahana lana Kīlauea I o ke kaua ma waina lao e lua. Na poe make I kilo I loho ke kahawai. Pane ia ke kahawai liki me maui. Ya, kamaina no
pani
kako.
wai o ia.
Pani wai o ia. Lo aku pani wai ma palama ke kahi.
Ai. A oi ke ali I elua ke kalua o nali o kahahana ke kahi a. Oi ho.
Kahawai ai. Oia
Kahawai.
Kahawai ai.
No he oia.
No Hawaii mai.
Ai.
Ho'ona mai. Luna lilo paha ke ali I ke namnawa. Ho'ona mai o kahawai oia ka.
A kaua I hola no la ko mali la.
Ai.
A lana kila o kahahana.
No.
O kahawai.
Make o kahahana.
Oh.
Lana kila o kahawai o kapa ia lo ke ia mele.
Ai.
Lana kila o kahawai.
Pani ia ke kahawai.
Pani ia ke kahawai.
Okay,
Kino. Kilo ilo. Kino palaho.
So as Kupuna Machado tells us, this is a very, very fierce, bloody battle that is very much likened to that famous battle on Maui called Kipaniwai o I'au. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pass it off now to Kumutiani, who's actually going to explain this and share about this mo'olelo just a little bit more. Mahalo nui ya oko pakahia pau I ka ho'olohe ana mai. Mahalo.
In 1920, when the Reverend Kivini Dishe presents the story of Kekuhaupio and his famous warrior Kamehameha in Kahiko o Hawaiʻi, he opens with a similar preface to that in He Ka'au no Kauʻilani. He recognizes that this is not a complete account and says to please excuse any omissions, but that we're presenting these stories of our famous warrior ancestors so that the next generation might understand the famous deeds of these brave warriors. And that they might also have pride in this. And he presented this during a time when the stories of warriors from all around the world were being shared as a result of World War I. And so here we get into some of the events that led up to a few battles that took place here in Niuhelewai. This map shows the Sandwich Islands, as Ellis included it in his book. And he says here that the chiefs who ruled these islands were when Captain Cook arrived were Taraiopu, Kahekiri, Taporiorani, and Ta'eo. Yeah, and so this is a map that William Ellis presented in his book, and it's a map of the Sandwich Islands, as we were named after some British earl. But you can clearly see on here the 4 separate kingdoms that were present prior to Kamehameha uniting all of the islands under one mo'i or one kingdom. So this is similar to the counties in Hawaii today. Today the counties in Hawaii are Hawaii County, which is Hawaii Island, Maui County, which is Maui Nui, Maui and the other islands nearby, Molokai, Lanai, and Kaho'olawe. And Oahu is known as Honolulu County, and Kauai County includes Kauai and Niihau. And so, similar to that, there were oftentimes 4 separate kingdoms. And the uniting of the islands was not a new idea that Kamehameha came up with. And 12 generations prior to him uniting the islands, there was a Hawaii island chief named Kalo Nui Ohua, who had made his way from Hawaii and taken over Maui Nui all the way over to Oahu, but he could not subdue Kauai. And so when Captain Cook arrives, he sees these 4 distinct kingdoms. And when he spends time on Hawaii Island, it is Kalaniʻopuʻu who is the mo'i there. But when Kalaniʻopuʻu dies shortly after, Hawaii Island has its own civil war amongst the next generation, where Kamehameha emerges victorious over his cousins and then makes his way to take over the other islands. At the same time that Hawaii Island is having its own civil war, the Maui chief Kahekili was working on creating a larger kingdom amongst the middle islands and uniting Oahu under Maui. Kahekili was known as Pa'ele Kulani. He was called this because he had tattooed his body, and many of his warriors had done the same. And half of his body was tattooed black, like the thunder god, Kanehekili, for whom he was named. When they describe Kahekili, he was known to love war, and he was a very skilled warrior. Kamehameha, the Hawaii island chief, was actually considered a child of Kahekili. He was considered Po'olua, or what we would describe as having two fathers. So one of his fathers was Keoua, and his other father was Kahekili, the Mo'i of Maui. And so when Kamehameha works on uniting Hawaii Island under himself, because of this relationship that he had with Kahekili, Kahekili doesn't actually go to war with Kamehameha, and instead sends a message to him saying, hey, after I die, then you come and invade my kingdom. And so Kamehameha waits until Kahekili dies, and then he goes and makes his way over. Surely Kamehameha, being such a skilled warrior, must be due in part to his father Kahekili. So we actually have two battles that happened here in Niuhelewai, and they have to do with the Maui chiefs taking over Oahu. Yeah. At one point, the Oahu Council of Chiefs decide to remove the ruling chief Kukona and replace him with someone else. And they go and choose Kahahana to replace him. Kahahana is the son of an Ewa chief named Elani, and he's very high-ranking, and he's also the nephew of Kahekili, and he's been raised on Maui. So Kahahana returns to Oahu as the ruling chief, and tells his uncle, hey, let me know what you need. And Kahekili requests from him pretty much and says, oh, I just need Kualoa. I'll just take Kualoa. Just one area, just this small spot, just Kualoa. So Kahahana turns around to tell his uncle's wishes to his kahuna. But when Ka'opulupulu, his kahuna, hears about his wishes, he denies him and pretty much describes how Kualoa is such an important land for many different reasons, and that he's not able to give it, especially since Kahahana did not conquer Oahu, but instead it was gifted to him or given to him. So Kahahana denies Kahekili, and Kahekili starts to create mistrust amongst Kahahana and his kahuna, who happens to be the older brother of Kahekili's kahuna. And so eventually Kahahana kills his kahuna, and this fulfills some prophecies. At some point, when Kalaniʻopuʻu comes from Hawaii Island to invade Maui, Kahekili calls to Kahahana, and Kahahana sends aid to his uncle and prevents a takeover of Maui from the Hawaii Island chiefs. But instead of reciprocating that aloha and maintaining their alliance, instead the Maui chiefs, they invade Oahu. The Maui chiefs land at Waikiki, and under the command of Kahahawai, one of Kahekili's warriors, he leads a battle against Kahahana. Kahahana actually flees, but the result of this is that the stream of Niuhelewai here in Kapalama was dammed with bodies from the battle. So Kahahana fled, was living in the boonies for a few years before he was found and later killed. Another name of an area nearby is called Waipilopilo, and this area was named because of the bad smell that came from the stream, because it was full of dead bodies from the massacre of the Maui chiefs over the Oahu chiefs. And there was actually a second time where the stream of Niuhelewai was dammed again. So a little while later, Kahahana's father, Elani, he leads a rebellion from the area of Ewa. And so there's a handful of Ewa chiefs that gather and plan this rebellion, and their plan is to attack all of their Maui occupiers in different locations on the same night. But word gets out to Kahekili's son Kalanikupule, and he warns his father. And so instead, this resulted in Kahekili putting down the rebellion of the Oahu chiefs, and again the stream of Niuhelewai was dammed with bodies. And the rebellious plans of those Ewa chiefs of Oahu was called Waipi'o Kimopo, because it was in Waipi'o where they planned, where they made plans for these attacks. Again, a'ole i pau.
Oh, wow. Mahalo nui ia oloa e kumuhau ole a me kumutiani no ka ha'i molelo ana mai. Ano ka ho'olauna ia ana o hulukupuna hanalei masharo. Ano laila e ia i kako ma ka hopena o ke ia haawi ana pili Ina ka'au o keia wahine o ia ho'i o Niuhelewai ma ka palama o Ahone. We have come to the end of our presentation today, Kahiko, and we hope you all enjoyed the wonderful ike and most of all the ka'au that was shared.
Yes, mahalo, Kalani. And at this time, we can open it up for questions from our audience. If you have questions for Kumutiani, Kumuhaoli, or Kalani or myself, they are here on the panel. And please share any questions in the Q&A, and I can read them off for us to go over. I have a question here that's asking, how are these mo'olelo being shared during this time of social distancing due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Anybody want to share how they've adapted?
So for a lot of our professional development programs, our workshops that we hosted prior to COVID, we all pretty much got together and decided, how can we continue our all of this wonderful hana that we've been doing? And so just like this, creating virtual presentations, both synchronously and asynchronously, so that we can continue to reach out to our haumana and our community. We have our ho'alaho and our kukalahale programs that has been doing a lot of presentations, like I said, virtually, asynchronously, and synchronously, and has been sharing a lot of our mo'olelo and a lot of the ike that we still want to continue to share with all of our participants and our community at large. So those are some of the things that we've been doing so far and continue to do.
That's awesome. Haoli, Tiani?
Aloha mai kako. Can you guys hear me?
Hi.
Well, again, similar to Kalani, right? Again, doing those sort of virtual tours. I always like, because we can't, physically take them there anymore. I always take them on like Google Earth and kind of show kui certain points, or like we have lots of great visuals. I even say Rocky is awesome. Like, all these things that she puts together, right? All of these things that I show my haumana. Specifically in my Olelo Hawaii classes, right? We read things from the Nupepa. We translate things from the Nupepa, and also when we're learning like just simple things, right? Like Pepeke Henua, for example. They would translate stuff like Ayo o Haumea I Niuhelewai. Right, that's how they would learn their location patterns, right? Just by kind of, again, really embedding place into the content, right? And so through that is how, for me in my classes, how we keep these stories alive and real for our haumana. Oh yeah.
Aloha.
Hey, aloha. Yeah, just to follow up with what Kalani and Haoli said, it's really just collaborating and thinking a little bit more out of the box, looking at what are the other resources that are available. For me, I'm kind of have trouble with technology sometimes, so it's a little bit of a challenge, but mahalo nui to Rocky and everybody else that's been helping me to be able to just, have visuals to deliver the mo'olelo, because the mo'olelo, sometimes we can see the visuals, sometimes we can see the pali, we can see kona hua nui, sometimes we can see these places, and other times like when we look outside, maybe they're not there anymore, and we have to envision that in other ways. And so just really grateful for the new technology that is making it more possible for us to be able to share this virtually. Mahalo.
Oh, mahalo. And I just remember how I've been able to share as well. With my classes or other classes, other teachers on campus have asked me to support some projects, like giving out some taro plantings, some huli, for their students. And one of the teachers, the idea for the project was, okay, well, we can't get together as a group at the Malakalo or the taro patch on campus, but if I can share with them to take home and they pick up one by one on campus, the lesson itself, the haʻawina, is to malama and the experiences of malama taro plant from a very cakey stage all the way growing as the months go by and the situations that come up. So even though we're not as a group working hands-on, they're individually working hands-on, and they're connecting to how Niuhelewai used to have the kalo as well. And I'll talk more about that on the 24th. But maybe another question, maybe for Tiani. Julie saying, well, glad to be corrected that chicken fighting did not come from the Filipinos. Laugh out loud, but I mean,
just to go back on that, like remember, so we're over here in Oceania in the middle of the Pacific, but our ancestors came from different places, and some of those migrations did migrate over from Southeast Asia. And so when we look at the Filipino culture and we look at even our languages, we do belong to the same language family, and we do have a lot of similarities. And so maybe you're not wrong. Yeah. Mahalo.
and again, everything, like for us, we remind our students that it's place specific, place based in Hawaii. This is how, in this aupua, this is how the kupuna did their things, as well as the mo'olelo, and then other aupua might be different. But even Auntie Gil Makukane London, she asked me, do students learn Oli and Mele about Niuhelewai and Kapalama? Maybe Kalani?
Yes, Santi, they sure do. As we say, they either volunteer to do it, or they're voluntold, or they sign up for our classes. We do have our Papa hula here on campus that I teach, and we also do a lot of mele and hula in our professional development workshops for our faculty, staff, and administrators, as well for our students. So it's incorporated throughout our campus in a lot of the things that we do, especially with any of our general campus meetings, any big event that we have on our campus, where Honolulu Community College and our administration are very happy to support Mea Hawaii, and ensuring that we do mahalo and honor our host culture here on our campus.
Mahalo. Another question coming in from Kalialoa. Please, mahalo, not question, she's telling everybody a mahalo for the multimedia specialist for the awesome job in creating the media.
Rocky, can you turn on your camera just so everybody can see you, so everybody can put the face of the wonderful person who helped us with all of our multimedia needs? Yeah, our guru, our everything that you can think of that encompasses an expert in multimedia. That's our Rochelle Kapoor Midro. Mahalo.
Mahalo, mahalo.
Yes, mahalo, Rocky. Oh, another good question is, what kind of support has the Honolulu Community College administration provided to increase culture and language parity on our campus? Well, I myself, as the Hawaii Paku'ukeʻau representative for our campus, selected by our chancellor, and this webinar series is sponsored by Hawaii Paku'ukeʻau. Our campus is definitely a Hawaiian place of learning, which is indigenous serving, and it is in our mission to promote and perpetuate Hawaiian language and culture. And Kalani himself is the director for place-based and culture learning, and he could share a little bit more. I mean, he has already, but some of the faculty development he talked about already. But you want to add anything else?
Yeah. No, and then we also, it also goes to, we like to mahalo our campus as well, because our Kupu Kabai Hawaiian Council, it's not just a council just for us to kind of talk about how we can do more things Hawaii on campus, but it's actually a, what is that term? An actual, what is that, Alapaki, authoritative councils, where you have the governing bodies, so you have the faculty senate, and so our council is one of the governing bodies that help to make a lot of the decisions on our campus. So it's always good to know that we do have a strong voice, not just individually, but also through the council, that we have representatives that are both that are Native Hawaiian and non-natives serving on the council as well.
Yes, so our council as well as our administration who supports Hawaii Papo Keao initiatives is for our entire campus and community. It's not just for Native Hawaiians. This is a Hawaiian place of learning. This is where we live. We promote learning about our mo'olelo and place-based stories of Kapalama and Niuhelewai and Kalihi and Nuanu and Honolulu and Mokawea offshore. All of this area where our students are, connected, and it hopefully helps them identify with their, belonging and who they are and their heritage, whatever heritage they have. But this is their home. And so mahalo to the administration because they always support us, Chancellor Karen Lee for sure, and all the vice chancellors and deans. And I have another kudos or mahalo, Caitlin. Just want a special thank you to everyone for doing these webinars. They're awesome, and she truly does enjoy watching them. And again, this is recorded, and it will be on the Hawaii Papo Keao website.
Yes. Any other questions? Mana'o? Haoli, Tianima?
I do have a mana'o.
Yeah.
So I think for me, right, I never ever claimed to know everything about Niuhelewai and Kapalama, and I think all of us, we never ever claimed to any of us in this presentation, and we're still learning about this place and this space, right? And I like literally every week when I go to the Nupepa, I send Tiani or Kalea Aloha something. He's like, oh my God, look what I found. It's another thing about Niuhelewai. And so this is sort of just like a call to anybody who's listening right now. If you know anything, you have connection to this place, come talk to us. One of my things that I'm really trying to look for is for the ohana of Kupuna Machado, right? Kupuna Hanalei Machado, so we can connect with them and talk stories with them, because we really want to mahalo the ike that he left for us, right? So if anybody has connection to that, no ohana Machado, yeah, let us know. But mahalo nui again.
Hi, mahalo haole for nakila mana'o. Yes, that's very important. Everybody and all of us here, most of us, none of us are kama'aina to Niuhelewai. I mean, we're kama'aina because we spend most of our time here on campus, or we did pre-COVID. However, we come from other wahi, other places on this island, and then we just continue to kokua each other. And whenever some kind of ike comes across the table, we are so ecstatic to just continue to share with each other and just build and don't hold that for any one individual. So yes, mahalo for that. Yeah. We have a couple more. Billy. Has this helped with retention of Native Hawaiian students? Definitely, yes. We have. We've actually created a Native Hawaiian youth student orientation and registration process here on our campus, and we share all of these mo'olelo. We do a lot of things through culture and place-based methodologies. Not across the entire board, not just for students, but for our faculty, staff, and administrators. And so the idea for that is that, our students are going to be, they're going to come into contact with everybody, whether you are the custodian, whether you are the counselor, the librarian, receptionist, secretary, whatever your kuleana is on campus. We understand that everybody plays a very integral part in assisting all of our learner participants. And so by sharing this knowledge and by opening this up to everybody, no matter who you are on this campus, and so that they can have the opportunity to learn this ike and apply that in the respective kuleana on campus, it truly does help all of our students. And we have gotten a lot of feedback from our students of how they are so appreciative of having this type of service from the start. And so we have seen a lot of students who have actually registered with us just for a class or two, but they still have to come and participate in a handful of our presentations. And so this might not be their home campus, but later on they choose this to be their home campus because of the services and how we framed our services for all of these students. And so our numbers have stayed pretty steady in regards to our Native Hawaiian student population. Actually, even our non-Native Hawaiian students, as like we said, this is something that we share no matter who you are. Yeah, if you live in Hawaii, Hawaii is your home, and so we believe that this is something something very important for all who enrolls into our campus or who works here.
Yeah, mahalo, Kalani. I don't see any more questions. So.
Oh yeah, so if there are no more questions, lava paha no I mako miki ama manao ahiki ka hui puho ai kako. Alapaki, you want to let them know, remind them about our next session?
Hi, yeah. Please do not forget to mark your calendars for our second half presentation. Hoike o maka kaina o Niuhelewai me kapalama. Iki ao. Let's take a tour of today's Niuhelewai and Kapalama. So that's scheduled for Wednesday, March 24th at 12 noon.
Yeah, so mahalo once again to all of our kumu, haumana, and our staff for your contribution to today's presentation, and of course all of our attendees for joining us today. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have a beautiful and blessed day in our Hawaiʻi. Ahui ho, aloha no.
Aloha.
Aloha.